This video is brought to you by channel partner 4 years running Squarespace. They just refreshed their already industry-leading website creation toolset, making it easier than ever before to build the perfect website for your business, your project, or just for fun. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more.
Wayfinder has just released into 1.0 after a year of early access, and what a roller coaster of a journey it's been through. Despite really digging the art direction, character kits, and encounter design, I unfortunately could not recommend this one at the early access launch, as it was plagued by nearly all the MMO/live service launch issues that you can imagine. Ridiculous queue times, networking issues, overindulgent monetization, and there was also still work to be done to refine its combat and build craft. As such, the game was met with middling reception at exactly the same moment that Wayfinder's publisher, Digital Extremes, completely dissolved their publishing team, leaving Airship Syndicate to fend for themselves. Layoffs at Airship soon followed, and Wayfinder was later delisted from all storefronts while the studio spent some time to reassess. At that point, I thought it was all over for Wayfinder, and was sure it'd be sent to live on a farm with all the other live service casualties. But Airship Syndicate refused to fold. Despite dire straits, the studio downsized, directors took pay cuts, even put their own money down to push this over the line, and with their backs against the wall have spent the last year completely overhauling this game, such that it's now nearly unrecognizable from its early access launch. Wayfinder has undergone a remarkable transformation, shedding all the live service elements that initially plagued it. What was once a flawed MMO light, lacking any of the essential MMO features, has evolved into a genuinely competent action RPG with optional 3-player co-op. I've spent a collective 90 plus hours in this game now across the preview build, the betas, the early access, and this 1.0 launch. I've been through all the highs and lows, started fresh multiple times, and even still, I'm keen to jump in for another dungeon run or boss fight by virtue of these changes. Overall, Airship Syndicate have landed on something here that'll likely struggle to find huge success given the reception to its rocky launch, but it's one that certainly deserves a second look. Wayfinder was initially intended to be a free-to-play MMO light, similar in some aspects to Warframe. While Wayfinder 1.0 still retains that similar dungeon crawler loop, it presents as more of a traditional ARPG/looter with optional co-op, akin to Borderlands or Diablo, and this has really smoothed over the problems caused by that previous live service model. The game no longer requires an online connection to play, which means no more login issues, no annoying disconnects, and more notably, no lag. There's also been work done to make movement and combat snappier, like ability queuing, being able to animation cancel, redirect attacks mid-swing, and have more in-air control after a jump. Wayfinder's combat was already fundamentally solid with its diverse character and weapon abilities, the way that you would string together combos, dodging, parries, and active reloads on the guns, but all these changes make the combat more responsive than ever, perhaps more so than it could have ever been as an online-only game. Similarly, now that Airship has little interest in needlessly prolonging playtime, characters and weapons are no longer unlocked through long material grinds. Instead, characters are now easily unlocked through simple feats like beating a specific boss, and weapons are either bought from vendors or handed out like candy from chests. That results in way more gameplay variety than the previous model could have ever offered, making the whole experience far less monotonous. In 1.0, I've been able to play with basically every character and every weapon type in the time it would have previously taken to unlock a single character or weapon. The material grind to fully upgrade each of these things is still there for those who want to perfect their build, but now it's a lot more front-loaded and you get the chance to actually experiment with them before making that commitment. Perhaps more exciting, at least to me anyway, is the impressive amount of cosmetic stuff that you're now able to unlock by just playing the game. After completely ripping out the cash shop, Airship have converted every cosmetic that would have existed in there into actual loot drops. So there are now tons of armor pieces that you can collect for each character that you can freely mix, match, and dye, extra weapon skins, mounts, and furniture for your apartment. There is now a real sense of visual progression here that was completely absent when this was a free-to-play MMO light, and I cannot overstate just how much that strengthens the gameplay loop for someone like me who's all about the fashion game. It's not just visual progression that's been improved either, as Airship have also made improvements to Buildcraft over the last year. It's still not perfect, but it's noticeably better than before. One major gripe I had with the early access launch was that you just didn't know what any of these stats actually do. Well, thankfully, that information is now clearly communicated in-game by just hovering over them in the character sheet, which makes it far easier to gauge how everything is contributing to your build. Another grievance I had was that characters felt constrained to specific weapon types, like there was almost no reason to use a gun on a melee character. Well, that's also been addressed. Any interactions that were specific to melee or ranged attacks are now universal, and this has allowed me to make almost every weapon type work, no matter who I'm playing as. Now, it's still a pretty fundamentally shallow progression model. Outside a few little passive bonuses to play around, almost all of these systems are just in service of boosting your raw stats, lacking a lot of those gameplay-defining interactions or synergies that the best ARPGs offer. But I do think the simplicity of it makes for a very accessible buildcraft model, and you still do feel that power climb in the same way you would in Borderlands or Diablo, and it's always very satisfying to see all that work pay off. So those are the more systemic changes to Wayfinder since its launch, but there's also of course been a bunch of new content added in 1.0 and the updates prior. Since launch, there have been 2 new characters added to the game, Grendel, who's a bruiser with a focus on aggression and damage mitigation, and Laura, a sort of caster/tank hybrid that charges a meter for empowered magical attacks. The end game has been expanded a lot too. They've almost doubled the number of bosses in the game, alongside high-level mythic versions for you to push the limits of your build. You've got to beat them with different combinations of mutators to maximize rewards, and you can do this infinitely with no lockouts, resulting in a rather pleasant and addictive loop, knocking them over faster and faster as you continue to perfect your build. Likewise, there's now a new in-game setting to scale enemies and rewards up to your level, which makes dungeons now at least somewhat worth your time at max level. But of course, the new 1.0 dungeons provide the highest gear. And quick note on those dungeons, the randomized tile sets, side objectives, and mutator system that can be combined to chaotic effect are still in play here, which is great. I really enjoyed this from the early access. Sure, you'll come to recognize the same familiar spaces after a while, but there's enough here to diversify each dungeon run, such that the repetition hasn't felt grating, even after tens of hours of running them. Outside of bosses and dungeons, Wayfinder also has an open world component. The early access only had like 1.5 explorable zones, but there are now 3 in total, each with great little side quests and secrets to uncover. I praised this a lot in my previous review, and it's worth pointing out again, Wayfinder's art direction is ridiculously stunning. I know I'm definitely biased towards this stylized look, but I don't think anyone can look at these environments and not share that appreciation. I mean, the color work, the detail, the atmospheric lighting, it all looks fantastic, and the latest zone added with 1.0 is especially gorgeous. I will flag that performance continues to be an issue though. It's gotten better, but there's still semi-regular stuttering, FPS can drop as low as 50% in the open world or during heavy action, and I still get crashes every now and then, so that's worth keeping in mind. The other thing the 1.0 launch was unfortunately unable to fix is the story. Likely one of the holdovers from Wayfinder's MMO Lite Origins, where the story is more concerned with getting you to unlock all the dungeons and bosses and whatnot, and less so with telling a compelling narrative. It's not awful, I mean there are some okay twists and decent voice performances, but these oddly lit characters, canned mocap animations and unbefitting dialogue cards, it all still feels like it's stuck in early access, which stands in stark contrast against the premium look of the rest of the game. The conclusion to the story also feels obviously rushed. I totally get why that is though. You can tell there were grander plans in store for this narrative, but with Airship Syndicate stretched thin as they are, it's clear they needed to wrap this up in any way they could, given the uncertainty of Wayfinder's future.
You and I, and everyone else in this city have been through more than enough for 10 lifetimes.
Underwhelming story aside, for a mere $25, I've gotten over 90 hours of playtime out of this thing and still have more that I want to do. It's just got this Moorish quality about it, with its tight gameplay, the randomized dungeons, the power progression, the gorgeous visuals, and the cozy vibe. Look, sometimes you're just in the mood for a game where you can pop on a podcast or chill on a Discord call with friends while smacking some bad guys and working towards some long-term goal. It reminds me a lot of Remnant 2, actually. I was in a call the other day with a friend, and we were comparing the two games and noticed their similarities, and it's then that I realized why these kinds of games are really clicking with me at the moment. Remnant 2 has that live servicey endgame loop that I like, but it isn't a live service game, so balance and monetization aren't things that need to be accounted for in their design. The endgame is just to have fun, work your way up to basically breaking the game with some outrageous build, and then do it again with another build, or move on to your next adventure. People only have time for like 1 or 2 live service games these days, so where many studios are trying and failing to get a slice of that live service pie, games with that familiar chase but a more finite endpoint, like Remnant 2, I think will only continue to become more attractive. Albeit a more simplified offering, a Wayfinder now falls into that same bucket with the 1.0 launch. So if you're looking for another ARPG free of those live service drawbacks, I suspect you'll have a good time with this in much the same way I have. Airship Syndicate have been put through the ringer, to say the least. Catastrophic launch issues, their publisher splitting their partnership, studio layoffs, the directors putting their own dollar down to keep this train going. Many other studios would have hedged their bets, squeezed their players' wallets as much as they could before leaving them in the dust. But Airship Syndicate didn't. Given the game has basically no microtransactions aside from this little supporter pack you can buy, and has such a low base price point at $25, I cannot imagine Airship Syndicate are making big bucks from this. So the fact that this studio still, against all odds, did everything they could to push this over the finish line, to get this into a state that they are proud of and that their players deserve, that really speaks to their passion as game developers and their unwavering confidence in the work that they've created here. Is that confidence misplaced? Maybe. Despite this genre shift, the quality of life updates, and all the new content added with the 1.0 launch, it's only spiked to about 3,000 concurrent players on Steam, though it's also on PlayStation with crossplay, so maybe those numbers are a bit higher, especially with how well suited this game is for console. Regardless, those are pretty low numbers. But honestly, that's okay. This isn't a live service anymore. It's not reliant on a player base to survive. It's just an honest-to-goodness, mostly uncompromised video game that can now exist in perpetuality for anyone to experience, which is more than I can say for the many other live service titles I've had to wave goodbye to. I sincerely hope that Airship Syndicate gets the success and recognition they deserve, and that Wayfinder is someday regarded with the same admiration we have for games like No Man's Sky. It's increasingly rare that we see comebacks like this, but the broader industry should be taking note of these stories, because if teams as small as these can pull this off, then there is no excuse for the massive AAA behemoths to not at least try to do the same. Airship Syndicate have really earned my respect for this remarkable turnaround, and whether it's the next update, a spiritual successor, or another project entirely, I will be there day one for whatever they make next. For now, I'm delighted to say that I can finally recommend Wayfinder.
Are you thinking about making a career change or starting a new business? If you are, then you may want to think about setting up a website with the help of this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Maybe you want to start doing some writing, some photography, some whatever. Maybe you want to open your own food truck or your own stall at a farmer's market. No matter what it is you're doing, a website is going to help you profile who you are, where you are, and what you do so that customers can find you. For years now, Squarespace has been the very best in the website creation business. Their tools were second to none, making it super easy to create a website no matter your experience with building websites. You could be a total beginner, and Squarespace's tools would let you create a professional-looking website in mere minutes. Well, Squarespace just took things to a whole new level. Their all-new design intelligence framework leverages their 2 decades of experience in website creation to give even more tools to shape the website of your dreams. Not only can you select from and customize their super flexible design templates, but you can also now provide prompts that allow you to refine the tone of what is written on your website. Just type in what you'd like to communicate and then select what sort of tone you'd like it to have, like playful, funny, professional, professional, etc. Squarespace will then refine your words so it sounds and reads just right. This same technology can assist in writing product descriptions, blog posts, or mailouts. It's super helpful if you're not a native English speaker or you're just looking for some inspiration for how to word things better. Squarespace isn't just about the front-end experience though. It's also got all the back-end stuff you need to make sure your website is surfaced in search. Every Squarespace website supports sophisticated SEO tools that are just as easy to use as everything else Squarespace offers, meaning you can be sure that the customers who are looking for you can find you. There's so much more that Squarespace offers, so if you'd like to check it out for yourself, you can visit squarespace.com to try it for free. And if you want to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup to get 10% off your purchase of a website or a domain name. A big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.